For a long time and for decades, right, it was normal for people to join a company, be there for 40 years, and your career trajectory or your career growth was pretty predictable. If you were there for 5 years or 10 years, then this is what you would get, and this is the salary you would expect, and this is the career progression you would expect. But I find that kind of outsourcing of your career growth and career strategy to somebody else is dead. Okay, so let's talk about how you can create a career you absolutely love. And to do this, we're going to answer 5 questions. All right, so let's start with question number 1. So first things first is to ask yourself, how do I define a great career? Now, this question is not necessarily asking you which type of career you want to go into, although, I mean, yes, you could answer it in that sense. But in this question, it's asking you, what do you define as a great career, right? For me, a great career was one that would challenge my intellect, challenge my creativity, or allowed me to use my creativity. Hence, me being a writer is so great. It was going to also be a career whereby I wasn't always removed from my family. Family is really important to me. And this will get into one of the questions on this list about values. Family is one of my values, and so I didn't want to be so removed away from my family. When I was growing up, I had parents that had jobs that allowed them to be at home on the evenings and the weekends, and I wanted that type of life. I know that these days it's not as popular, but I wanted that type of life. And so for me, a great career included all of these elements, right? And then that can allow you to begin to think of the type of career that will afford you to do this, right? So I wanted a career that paid well, of course. I wanted a career that challenged my intellect. I wanted a career where I used my creativity, and I definitely wanted a career where I could be around for my family, right? And so that led me to some career choices. And, I got to be on this current path I'm in medical communication. So you can do this exercise for yourself, really thinking about the things you want in your career. Of course, good pay is always one of those ones, but beyond good pay, right? What else do you want your career to do for you, right? And for your life? The second question is, how do my skills and experiences fit with this career path that I want to pursue, right? Now, my experiences have all been in healthcare and in the biomedical sciences. So it would be a jump for me to say that I wanted to get an engineering job, unless I went back to school to get an engineering degree of some sort or some certification in that area, right? So that would not be something where I think that engineering is the next career I'll go into. But because my skills and experiences are in healthcare and the biomedical sciences, I definitely began to gravitate towards jobs that are within the life sciences, health sciences, pharmaceutical companies, because I had those relevant skills and experiences. So this is a question you also want to ask yourself. Well, how do my skills and experiences fit with this new job? And I think that when you also answer yourself this question for yourself, you'll be able to write a really good resume. There are a few videos I've done on writing the right resume, right? And you can check that out. I'll link some of them up here. But when you do this, it will help you to write a really good resume that speaks to the companies and the jobs, the types of jobs that you want to get into. This third question, okay, is really important because you may have skills and experiences, and you may even be good at those skills and you were good in those experiences, but you don't enjoy all of them, right? And so I really think it's very important for you to ask yourself, which of these skills and experiences give me a great sense of fulfillment or a great sense of purpose? Because the last thing you want to do is to show up for work every day and absolutely hate what you do. I don't believe in that. We're only on this earth for a brief time. Even if you live up to be 80, 90, 100 years old, it's only a short amount of time. There is no reason for you to be doing work that you absolutely hate, right? And so this is where you have to think, okay, which of my skills and experiences did I enjoy? Did I derive great sense of purpose from? when I was in graduate school and when I was in my postdoc, right, even though I was good at the lab work, even though I produced good results, I can tell you that it wasn't my favorite part of the experience. What were my favorite parts? The favorite parts were really teaching and writing. And today, thankfully, I get to combine those loves or those things that I gravitated towards in my work as a medical communications professional. So you really want to think about this. And I do derive a great sense of purpose and accomplishment from using my skills this way. And so it's really important for you to ask yourself, which of these skills and experiences actually give me a great sense of purpose and fulfill me. If you're enjoying this video so far and getting value, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. Then question number 4, which I alluded to in the first question, is does this career path or these career paths, do they align with my values, right? You really have to take stock of the things that you care about in terms of values and allow your work to align with that. There are people that are very, very passionate about the environment and conservation, and maybe you want to work in that area, or maybe the company that you're considering working for, you've noticed something about their practices that don't align with what you value. Well, maybe then that's a way for you to, weed them out of your process of trying to get a job there. Or it could be that you join that company and you help to bring some of those ideas that you have, right? How can we be more sustainable in our manufacturing processes? How can we, create processes that don't create so much waste? So you really want to also think about your values, because it can do one of two things. It can either help you say, I don't want to work for this company, or it can help you say, this is a good company, even though they are not treading this path right now. I think that I can bring my love for the environment and for conservation to this company and help them develop programs that further that cause, right? And so considering your values is really important. One of my really important values was family, right? Being around for my family. And I remember there was one job that I had, or there was a path I was trying to go on that would involve a lot of travel, right? And it would pay really well. It was a coveted job. It's a competitive job. It, would have challenged my intellect and creativity, but the travel was a lot. And even though, thanks to the, pandemic, a lot of those people didn't have to travel as much. Now they're having to travel again. I'm talking about medical science liaisons. For me, I was like, the travel's too much. I have a young family and I want to be around. I want to be here on the weekends. I want to be here during the weekday. I want to do evening things. I want to sit on the couch and read a romantic comedy, like those kind of things. So really, that was a guidepost for me in choosing. So really, I really want you to think about your values, the things that you value, and if this career path or even a particular company is aligned with that. The next question is, when I land this career, right? When I get into this career, how am I going to assess my growth and my progression? And I think that once you answer this question for yourself, this is not an easy question to answer, actually, to be honest, but it's going to allow you, once you get on that career path, to get involved in projects and open yourself to learning experiences that help you reach that goal. Right. So let's say that you really want to get to a director level within a company, right? Within a pharmaceutical company, within a biotech company. Well, because you have that mindset, the moment you arrive there, you begin to take steps. You do your work, of course, but you also begin to take steps and build relationships, right? That will help you grow in that direction. You may seek out the mentorship of people within the company, or even people outside of the company who have these roles, right? To learn from them, to learn what they did to get there, so that you also begin to put those building blocks in place to help you reach that goal. So really, as you get into a career, it's nice that you've landed the career, but now, and to be honest, I am at this place in my life right now because I've been a full-time medical communications professional, medical writer for the last 3 years, right? A little little over 3 years now, and I'm really seriously beginning to think, okay, G, what is the next step for you? What is the next thing on the horizon, right? What do you want to become a manager? Do you want to go into director positions? Then if that's the case, what do I need to do to grow, to progress, so that I can reach those levels? This is really, really important. Like I was saying at the beginning, it's not like the past where you knew, well, if I'm here for 5 years, then I'm going to be promoted to this level. If I'm here for 10 years, no, these days you have to be proactive about your own career strategy and how you're going to grow in that career path. I remember a few years ago, I posted a poll on LinkedIn asking a question around networking. And I remember the number of people that were very, very resistant to the term and to the thought process of networking, right? And when I dug a little deeper, I realized it was because of the preconceived notion of networking as some kind of event or some kind of activity you carry out. And this activity means you have to schmooze your way into people's lives and, be manipulative. And then at some point, you'll be able to manipulate that relationship to get what you want. And to be honest, for me, networking is not that at all. Networking for me is simply relationship building. And so in today's video, I'm going to talk about some ways to make networking less stressful, to not overthink it, and actually to make it an enjoyable process that benefits your career. Before we jump into those tips, let me lay a few foundations upon which we will build everything else. So the first thing is that don't push networking to some activity you do when you need it or when you desperately need it, right? I have come across a lot of people over the last 3 or 4 years that I've been doing this who only begin to talk to people when they desperately need a job. But networking is something you should make a natural part of your life. And we're going to talk about how to do that. The second thing is that when you begin to see networking as a relationship building exercise instead of an uncomfortable and cringy situation where you need to talk to people, you realize that communication and relationship building are skills that just about anybody can build. Personally, I'm not a super extrovert. In fact, what some people would call an ambivert, which means I have some portion of me that's extroverted and then I have some part of me that's introverted. But I really do have strong introvert tendencies. And so, yes, communicating with people and going to talk to people can feel uncomfortable, but it's a skill I have consistently worked on and consistently strive to get better at. And so, yes, this is a skill you can get better at. I also want to add that it's important to have a promotion focus. The term promotion focus comes from psychological literature, and it talks about people that tend to have a positive outlook on situations and tend to go through those situations regardless of what that outcome may be, right, until they reach their goals. And so somebody with a strong promotion focus, for instance, would say, okay, I'm going to reach out to people, I'm going to network with people, and regardless of the response, right, I'm just going to keep on moving on until I reach my goal, right? Which means that when you start networking, when you start this relationship building as part of your life, you make it a lifestyle, right? There are people that will respond really well to you and there are others that will not. And that's okay, all right? If you start to initiate a relationship and people are standoffish, keep it moving, bro. Keep it moving, sis. You'll be fine, okay? You'll be okay. And then I want you to realize that your network may be bigger than you actually think, okay? So now that we've established these rules, let's talk about how to actually go about initiating these types of relationships. When I was growing up, my father used to say to me, you'll have more friends if you are friendly. And he was right. When I was younger, I tended to keep to myself and I was quiet and shy and I cried a lot. But as I entered into my teens and I began to open up and began to be a little bit more friendly, I noticed that he was right. There were more people that wanted to be my friend, right? And so don't always wait for people to reach out to you. Don't just sit down and say, oh, nobody ever talks to me.
Have you talked to somebody? That's really an important thing to consider. And so if you're finding that you are not building relationships that allow you to move forward in your career, you take the initiative, right? You reach out to that person on LinkedIn that you admire. Reach out to that person that's an alumni from your school working at that company that you want to work at in the future. Reach out to people. And these days, reaching out to people is really simple, really. You can look them up on LinkedIn and message them. You could look them up, for their company. Most companies have simple email structures. You could use that to email the person. There's Facebook. There's so many tools out there that you can use to reach out to people. Take the initiative. Recently, I began to think of what my next steps are within my own career. And I reached out to somebody within my company. We had both worked at a previous company. So we did have a prior relationship, but I hadn't spoken to her in many months. And I reached out to her and said, hey, I am thinking of what my next steps will be. Would you mind us meeting, having a chat about your career path? Because her career path, I'm kind of on that career path, right? And she is much in a much higher position than I am at the director level. And I was like, okay, I think if that's where I want to go, this is somebody I should speak with. So I took that initiative, sent that message, and she responded and said, hey, gee, let's have lunch and let's talk about this. And so we did have lunch and we talked about her career path, and she gave me tips on what I could do so that when I get to that point, right, or what I can do to get to that point so that when I'm applying, the path is much easier. And then in that conversation, of her own accord, she connected me with 2 more people that were leaders that were at her level and said, hey, talk to these people. And one thing she told me in that meeting, she said, because the more people you know, the more people can vouch for you and the farther you'll get. So that's what I'm passing on to you. Right? I didn't go into that meeting to even get a networking tip, but me reaching out to her and saying, hey, can you talk to me about my career? She was able to open up and tell me that you're absolutely on the money. You're right with what you did, because the more people that know you, the more people you talk to, the more people that can vouch for you. So take the initiative and start these conversations, because listen, you're not just going to learn about somebody's career path. You're not only going to gain that person as an ally, you could be opening up a door to even more relationships and to insider knowledge you do not already have, right? So take that initiative. Now, perhaps you're thinking, okay, G, I get it. I want to take initiative, but what kind of message do I send? Here's a draft of the message that I sent to the person that I connected with on her career path. Hi, Kristen. I hope you're doing well. I have been thinking about my next steps with my role, and you came to mind. I would love to learn more about your role in market development and perhaps how I could grow on that path. Do you have time on your calendar next few weeks to chat? See? And so you can do that whether you know the person, whether the person is a warm lead, you know the person, or you don't know the person. There are people that have reached out to me directly on LinkedIn and said, hey, I'd love to have a chat with you. And I do have on my calendar occasionally coffee chats, 15-minute coffee chats that I book with people, and these people speak with me. So it's absolutely possible to even reach out to somebody that you don't know and have a conversation with them. Always be genuine in your approach. And this especially applies if, let's say, you know the person from afar, you've admired the person from afar, and yet, you met the person and there's a bit of fangirling going on. That's fine, okay? Fangirling is fine. I've done it. But it's really important to not start the conversation with flattery and to be really genuine, right? It doesn't happen often, but I have sometimes been on the receiving end of false flattery and false praise, and it felt icky and weird. So do avoid doing that. This is not a contest to impress people. This is just a way for you to get to know people, to begin to build relationships with people that could benefit you. And I want to say that there is a study that LinkedIn had done with MIT. And in that study, they showed that your relationships or your network doesn't have to become like super strong, right? You don't have to be best friends with people for them to benefit your career. Just being in contact with them, being in their sphere of awareness can lead to referrals, can lead to conversations, can lead to so much more than you ever thought possible. So don't think that just because you're connecting with people, you have to become best friends with them. You can still benefit from what you would consider a loose relationship. When you're communicating with people, finding commonalities always works. So when in doubt, find commonalities. Remember when I was talking about, that alumni that works at that company that you admire, that's already two commonalities, right? The person is an alumni of your school. They went to the same school as you and they're working at a company that you love. And so those are two things. And so you can start your conversation there. If you're struggling to find something, find commonalities. Are you both parents? Are you both dog owners? Do you both like football? Do you both like golf? Find some, all of us, I really do believe that even though there are 8 billion people on this planet, that you can find some commonality with maybe every single person. I don't know. But you will find commonalities with a lot of people. So look for those and use those as launch pads to potentially start your conversation. It always goes down well when you do. Now, when you've taken initiative, you started connecting, you started having conversations, I want to encourage you to ask open-ended questions. When you ask yes or no answers, it doesn't generate conversation. So, do you like dogs? Yes. It's sunny outside today. Do you agree? Yes. And actually, it's not sunny outside. Today it's cloudy. Anyway, moving on. Instead of asking those types of questions, ask open-ended questions like, what inspired you to get on this career path? What are some of the challenges that you face on this career path? What advice would you give to somebody who wants to enter into this career path? Is there anybody else I should talk to about this type of role? When you ask those questions, you provoke, unless the person is really, really different, you do provoke conversation and more information than you actually ask for, right? So always be armed with some open-ended questions that you want to ask and ask them, right? It will keep the conversation going and make it feel natural. And this is true whether you're reaching out to people through a platform like LinkedIn or you actually go to a networking event. Yes, one of those events that a lot of us don't like. If you do go to a physical event, everything I just chatted about, taking initiative, finding commonalities, asking open-ended questions, they all still work. And so go ahead and practice them. I know you're enjoying this episode and we're going to get right back to it, but I want to speak to you for a moment. If you're a student leader or university leader or professional organization leader and you are responsible for working with consultants and speakers to educate, empower, and inspire your audiences. My name is Dr. Gertrude Nontra, and I've had the privilege of speaking at over 25 different institutions and professional organizations on career design, personal branding, as well as preparing for careers outside of academia, specifically with careers within the biosciences. If you need a speaker, I'm happy to come to your organization to speak either in person or virtually. If that's you, go to theboldphd.com/speaking to learn more, or you can simply email me at hello@theboldphd.com. Let's get back into the episode. At the beginning of this year, I was really thinking about the topic of building career insurance, right? You can't go buy career insurance the way you can buy home insurance or life insurance. But I really think about career insurance seriously because I've experienced a layoff before, I've experienced under earning before, and I never want that to happen to me ever again. I never want to feel helpless within my career ever again. And this is one of the reasons why I even started this YouTube channel and the podcast, right? Is I just want to share everything I know about just building a solid foundation, not just for your career today, but for a long time to come. And so 3 ways I've really been thinking about building career insurance throughout my lifetime, right, are what I'm going to be sharing in today's video. The 3 things I'm going to share are become a favor economy millionaire, reactivate your circles, and create your own party. So let's start with talking about becoming a favor economy millionaire. I actually got this phrase, the favor economy millionaire, from a book known as Make No Small Plans. It's a group of 4 friends who tell the story of how they built an entrepreneurial conference and how they got people like Bill Clinton and Richard Branson to speak at these conferences, right? And then they ended up buying a ski resort. It's a pretty good book. But anyway, in there, they talk about this idea of becoming a favor economy millionaire. And the whole concept is if you do enough favors for other people, if you build enough goodwill, if you help enough other people for free without expecting immediate rewards, then later on you can basically cash in on those chips. And yes, not everybody will be willing to help you in the time that you need it, and which is why I see that people push back against this idea, right? We live in a world that is quite capitalistic and increasingly becoming individualistic, right? And the idea is, no, I'm not going to help anybody. Anything I do is for me and it's me centric, right? And so the idea of helping people for free, that can be really frowned upon. Also, if you're running a business, right, and people ask you to do things for free, that can be quite annoying, right? I've had situations where, listen, I'm not complaining about this. I actually really appreciate invitations to speak, and actually on some of my videos and recently I've really been inviting people to invite me to speak. But one of the things that can be challenging is when people reach out and they want you to speak for free, knowing that it's going to take your time. And I've done some free talks and I know some of those end up paying off later on. I'm not talking about that. Like if you're running a business, then of course you're not a charity. Otherwise you'll be out of business within no time. But within reason, there is help that we can offer to people where we can later on reap the benefits of. So let me tell you this quick story. When I started this YouTube channel and I started writing on LinkedIn, right, I didn't really think that it would end up becoming what it has become. I don't think it's a huge business, but it is a growing business, right? And back then, I only shared things for free. I didn't charge any money for anything. And I want to say about a year into me sharing things on LinkedIn and sharing things here on YouTube, even though I thought not a lot of people were watching, well, I started to get messages like this one here. I'm going to read it to you. It says, "Hi Gertrude, I hope all is well. I wanted to share some exciting news. I was approved for hire as a qualitative UXR at Meta, and I'm currently waiting to be assigned a team. I just wanted to share that your YouTube channel and LinkedIn post played a tremendous part in my preparation. Thank you so much." Then here's another one. "Hi Gertrude, thanks for connecting. Just wanted to say thank you. I'm a recent PhD grad and opted for an industry role versus staying in academia, a large part because of your YouTube videos. You really inspired me to look for other options other than a postdoc. And now I'm 3 months into my new role in industry and I love it." And I just was so amazed. And you know something, I got a lot of satisfaction from that. People were watching these YouTube videos, people were reading these LinkedIn posts, they were taking my advice, they were applying it, and they were getting results, right? Now you're thinking, okay, how is that paying you off? Well, first of all, it paid me off in me feeling good. But here's the other way it's helped me in a lot of ways. So there was this one instance, and I'll just share one of those instances with you. There was this one instance where I was just minding my business, you know, just like living my life. And then I get a message from a recruiter, an HR person at a very prestigious academic institution that's not too far from me. And and this institution has had Nobel laureates come out of it. And so, they reached out and said, "Hey, we have this role that has opened up and we want you to apply and interview for it." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. This has never happened to me before, but let me do that." I wasn't looking. And so I went ahead and applied for the role, went through the interview process. I think there were like maybe 3 levels to the interview. And I was offered the job. It was good pay, good benefits. It was going to be like, I would have a really nice cush office, all of these things. At this point in my life though, I had been offered a job within industry and I had planned on taking that role. And so when this role came along, even though I interviewed and went through the whole process, I really had to think about it. And it was a role in career development. And so it was very, very similar to what I'm doing here on the post-PhD. And in order for me to take that job, I haven't shared this, I don't think I've ever shared this before, but in order to take that job, I would essentially have to give up this channel. And I said no, because it would be conflicting to my job. Or I think at some point they were thinking maybe they would purchase the rights to some of the content. And I don't know. I don't know how it was going to be, but me giving up stuff I had created at the time didn't seem, even though the role was good, it just didn't seem, not that it wasn't right. People do this all the time, by the way. And people do it. People sell their rights to content all the time. But I just didn't feel so good about it, right? It wasn't a wrong thing. I just didn't feel good about it. So I didn't do it. I didn't take the opportunity, and I turned it down. I was really appreciative. And sometimes I think back to that time, to that day when I turned it down, and I wonder what my life would have looked like if I had gone that path. But I didn't go that path. The point, however, here is that I know after that interview, I really remember thinking to myself, oh my goodness, if I had just cold applied to this role without anybody basically advocating for me, somebody who had gone ahead and referred me to this role, because I found out later that it was somebody who was reading my LinkedIn posts, who had referred me to this role and had basically sang my praises. Like, they made me seem like a genius, okay, to this group of people. And so they were just so happy to have me, right? And I ended up turning it down. But after that incident, I remember thinking that there's no way this would have happened if somebody had not read my LinkedIn post and decided that I would be excellent for this role, right? And so that's one way in which it paid off, where I was giving my knowledge away for free, not thinking anything of it. There are these people sending me thank you messages, and then I'm even getting job offers out of the whole deal. And this hasn't been the only type thing that has happened to me. There are other stories I could tell you that are just incredible, and sometimes I look at them and I'm like, wow. So becoming a favor economy millionaire essentially is you building goodwill, you doing good for others, you helping other people, knowing that in some way, somehow, even sometimes from people you least expect it, right, they could step in and be a great help to you in your career, because you have definitely helped a lot of other people. So in my case, it was just writing on LinkedIn and making YouTube videos. You don't have to do the same thing, but just find ways in which you can lend your help. You can raise your hand within reason, of course, right? Like I talked about this, like we're not just giving our time and money and everything away for free, but within reason and what's reasonable, be a helper so that you can be a favor economy millionaire. The second way is to reactivate your circles. I've talked before about how when I would talk about networking, there would be people that pushed back on it. I remember the first time I wrote about networking on LinkedIn and the comments that I got, right, about people, I don't want to talk to people if those people, you know, the concept of talking to people or networking was just repulsive to so many people. And I really had to step back and do a little bit of investigation as to why people were feeling this way. And I realized that was because of maybe some negative experiences they've had, or how the word networking has been used or depicted in popular culture, right? And so I really began to think of networking and the different ways in which I could present it so that it's palatable, so that it's something that doesn't feel like a chore. So it's something that you don't feel like you have to go out there to do. And that ended up being one of those concepts, or one of the ideas I came up with. I didn't really come up with the idea of networking, but one of the ideas I thought about was the fact that you have circles. You already have circles that you are a part of, whether it's a school alumni group, whether it is a religious group, whether it is a group, a social, a civic group within your city or country, whether that's being part of the PTA at your child's school, or even the gym you are part of. There are people within your circles. The thing is that a lot of us, sometimes we forget that these people exist and that we could potentially talk to them about our careers, or not even necessarily about our careers, but just activate or reactivate those circles. recently I was doing an interview with a PhD who had left academia to working in communications. She's an English PhD who had gone into communications, and not scientific communications, just communications. And, she said something. She said when she began to contemplate leaving academia, she actually began to talk to alumni from her school who had done the same thing, who had done something similar, who had gone into similar professions. So you see, she didn't need to go out there to find people. She basically reactivated her circle, activated her circle, and within her circle of alumni friends was able to find people to talk to as she made plans to leave academia. And it took her, I remember chatting with her, and she said it took her about 10 months to a year. But during that time, she talked to these people, she came up with a game plan, and that game plan ended up helping her transition very smoothly from academia into a non-academic job without it disrupting her income, right? And so really think about the circles that you have, right? And think about sending that email to say hello. Or you've never talked to that guy at the gym, but you kind of like wave and you kind of know that you both exist. How about you go and say, hey, I see you every day here. I mean, yeah, that can easily look like a pickup line, but just be careful with your approach. But it's possible for you to go and start initiating these conversations that could potentially help your career. And then creating your own party. Okay, so tell me if this has ever happened to you before, right? There's a party happening, you know about it, right? Because it's within your broader circle. Maybe they're not necessarily your friends, but it's in your circle. And everybody you know in that circle has been invited to that party except you. And then somebody asks you, hey, aren't you coming to the party? And then you say, oh, yeah. I mean, you were trying to be nonchalant about it, but then you just tell them, well, I wasn't invited. Has this ever happened? If it has, let me know. Because it's really, in real life, has happened to me before, where there was a party going on. A lot of people that my husband and I knew were going to this party. And it wasn't even before the party, it was after the party. Somebody saw my husband and was like, hey, I didn't see you at so-and-so's party. How come you didn't show up? And my husband was just like, we weren't invited. And yeah, later on, it was really awkward. But later on, the person came up to us and was like, oh, I'm so sorry I couldn't invite you. And I was just like, it's okay. It's all right. But this is one of the reasons why I'm a big believer in creating your own party, right? I know we're talking about parties, but in life and with your career, you can create your own party so that you never feel like you've been left out and you never have to beg to be at other people's parties. Going back to LinkedIn and YouTube, and I love using these as examples, right? Even though the whole point of me doing LinkedIn and YouTube has been to help other people, it has also been a way for me to create my own party. It's been a way, again, going back to the phrase I used to create my own career insurance, right? And so now, because I've connected with a lot of people, because I've built a lot of goodwill, if I need something and I go and I ask for it, right? Unlike the first one where it was like you build goodwill and the goodwill comes back to you. Now, if I really wanted to go and ask somebody for something, because I've created my own party, because I've created my own thing that looks nice and attractive, people want to come to my party, right? I don't need to beg to be at theirs. My LinkedIn and my YouTube and my website now have become the portfolio that go ahead of me and speak for me. And so before I ever go, and this has happened for both of the non-academic jobs I've held outside of academia, before I ever step into that room to interview, people have read so much about me that the lift is easier, right? The lift is much easier because I created my own party. So maybe creating your own party is creating your portfolio, right? Maybe creating your party is like writing on LinkedIn. It's getting in touch with people on LinkedIn. Create your own party, so you never feel like you're left out, you never feel like you have to beg, you never feel like everything is a heavy lift. If you take these 3 ways of building career insurance and you even implement one of these per quarter this year, I can assure you, you will build a pretty beautiful career insurance for your life and for your career. So the other day I was on a call with my younger sister, and I was telling her that she needed to slow down on her workload a bit because she's super busy. And in response, she, retorted back and said, "Aren't you the person with 10 jobs?" Which made me laugh. Of course, I don't have 10 jobs, but I have been a multi-passionate my whole life, right? And, tell me in the comments if you've ever experienced this. But when you're growing up and you're multi-passionate, a lot of the time people see you as somebody that's unfocused and maybe, won't she pick a path and stick to that? She's good at many things. We don't even really know which path she should choose. And then you get kind of, if you grew up where I grew up, which is in Ghana, usually you choose a major at the high school level, and so you either become a science student or an art student or a visual arts student at a very, very tender age. But for multi-passionate people, this can feel very uncomfortable, right? And so imagine my delight when I came across the concept of a portfolio career. I did a little bit of research, and here's the definition that I came up with that excited me, right? A portfolio career is one that allows multi-passionate people to use their skills to earn money in multiple ways. So instead of being looked at as somebody that's unfocused, it's possible for us to still leverage our multiple passions, but build a career that makes sense out of all those multiple skills. Now, how exactly do you do that? Now, of course, before we even move on, I want to address what I'm describing can sound like and what it can do if you don't develop it properly. So if you're really multi-passionate, one of there's a few things that can happen, but on one side of the road is you become somebody that really, never really focuses on anything, never cultivates any of your skills or builds any of your skills to a level where, you can use it to earn money. You may, struggle with choosing a major. I know that part of it, right? Where people hop from major to major and never really settle down, and then they get older and it affects them negatively in making money and building wealth. There can be that side to it. What I'm talking about here, what I'm going to be describing in this video, however, is using your skills. A skill is something that you develop, right? And I really believe that even if you're multi-passionate, you can look at your multiple passions, because it can be a passion, but it's not quite a skill yet. It becomes a skill when you don't have to exert yourself to use that skill. So for instance, when you first start learning to play the piano, I started learning to play the piano when I was younger. There's a lot of looking at the keys. There's a lot of trying to do A, B, C, right? It's like when you're learning how to type too. But then over time, when you get better at it, your fingers just kind of run across the keys. Nowadays, I don't have to use conscious resources, right, to type when I'm typing. And so that's what a skill is, right? So you may have multiple passions, but I really do think that within those multiple passions, it's okay for you to say, these ones are the ones I enjoy the most, and I'm going to dedicate time, right, to develop these particular passions until they become skills. And so sometime in 2021, for instance, for me, I began to put some conscious resources or some time into learning how to write fiction. I didn't know how to write fiction during the pandemic, right? I had fallen back in love with reading. And as I read the books, I began to think of what it would be like to come up with my own characters and write a story from beginning to end. And so I ended up investing in a course from somebody that has been doing this for a really long time. I learned from her how to develop a story. And that was really helpful because I had started writing a story but never would finish it. But after I took this course and learned the different beats that are in a story, the way, especially for romance, you have to have a happily ever after, but then you have to have an event in the middle there where it looks looks like the couple is breaking up, right? I had to learn that. And now when I'm writing fiction, I don't have to go back to see, oh, did I meet all these? Like, now it's more of a skill. It's easier for me to do, right? So, but it was a passion. If I hadn't developed it and really learned how to write the story, right, then it would just remain a passion and I'd have a plethora of unfinished products. So what I'm saying here is that even when you're multi-passionate, it's okay for you to say, I'm passionate about these 20 things, but I'm going to take these 2 or 3 things at a time and develop them to skill level so that I can deploy them. So as you think about this, I don't want you to think of it as I have these multiple passions that to play with, and so I'm going to dabble in a little of this and dabble in a little of that and dabble in a little of that. I think it's really wise and helpful, right, to say I have all these passions, but I'm going to develop, and if you want, you can develop each and every single one of them, but 1 or 2 at a time. Let it get to a place where you're no longer using conscious resources to learn that thing, and then you can kind of set it free to make money for you. Hey, did you know that I speak to and train groups at universities, colleges, and professional organizations on the topics I cover on this channel? I do. So if your group would like to bring me in virtually or in person to cover intentional career design, personal branding that builds your career, careers within scientific communications or biotech, go to theboldphd.com/speaking. As I really began to think about this idea of a portfolio career, I also began to think of the forms in which a portfolio career could take, right? And so there were 3 models that, based on just observations that I've just observing the world, right, that I devised. Maybe you can call it devised. I didn't really come up with these, but it's just an observation that I made. The first one is what I'll call a linear model. The second one, a blended model. And the third one, a modular model. And I'm going to explain what each of these is. So with a linear model, this is where you're building a career around one primary skill set. And so let's say that you have a PhD in neuroscience, right? And you're a college professor. But apart from you being a college professor doing what academics do, you also contribute to an online publication, a monthly online publication that publishes topics, not peer-reviewed papers, but articles on trending neuroscience topics. But also you are a consultant to, let's say, a biotech company in town that is developing therapies or developing interventions that use your expertise. So here you are, you have this primary skill set, and yet you're deploying it in 3 different ways: in being a college professor, in being a consultant to the biotech world, as well as being a writer and contributor to this magazine, right? And it's all built around your expertise of being a neuroscientist, right? With a blended model, you're using a unique mix of your skills, right? And they sort of enhance each other, build upon each other. And this is where I personally find myself, right? Yes, I was trained in the sciences and in healthcare. I currently use those skills within medical communications. But my skill of writing and creating content is also helpful for me when I'm creating these YouTube videos. As a matter of fact, when I was interviewing for my current job, my manager, who is still my manager, asked me if I had any experience creating video content, and I shared my YouTube channel as an example, right? And that was kind of helpful in helping me land that job because it showed that I had experience with video. And so that's how that skill of content creation and video creation helped me with my primary job, which is medical communications. And then I write fiction. Now, the way that I think about content, the way that I think about scientific content, video content, scientific content, and fiction content are not that different, even though there are 3 different pieces of content or 3 different content types that use different parts of my brain, right? They're all very interrelated because it's still around the idea of content creation. So this is where there can be a bit of a blur between the linear and a blended model. But really, with the blended model, you're using separate skills, but each of the skills builds or enhances each other. And I just love it because for me, it allows me to deploy different facets of me. In the modular model, you're using distinct skills in different roles that don't overlap, okay? Like they don't overlap. And so think about the data analyst that is also a bodybuilding instructor on the weekends, right? Yes, maybe we could argue that data analysis and, bodybuilding have some things in common, but really they are different skill sets, right? When I talked about the linear model, when I talked about the blended model, they made sense because like you could see the string in between the skills. But like if your bodybuilding coach shows up and then later you find out that they are a data analyst at IBM, I think a lot of us are going to be like, okay, that's a pretty cool combination, but they're really distinct skills. And I think that for somebody that loves having these 2 or 3 things as, again, separate parts of their identity that they use to make money, listen, I'm just rooting for these people. I remember when I started talking about this idea of a portfolio career on LinkedIn, somebody had asked me a question about, but what if I have all these things and I'm absolutely interested in them and I want to do all of them? And here's the answer that I gave. I said, as much as I'm very much a multi-passionate and I advocate, this is why I made today's video, I'm advocating for you to explore those passions and develop them into skills. We all have a limited amount of time to focus on work, right? I don't know about you, but I have a family and it's important for me to spend time with them. It's important for me to talk to them, right? I have other activities I'm involved in. It's important that I engage in those activities. So all of my life cannot be about work. It's just as simple as that. And so when you find yourself being pulled in all different directions, maybe one question to ask yourself is, well, which 2 or 3 of these things, and I say 2 or 3 because I think that in these 2 or 3 things, you will definitely satisfy all those itches you want to scratch, right? And you really will, because here I am, doing content, being in medical communications, writing fiction, and I get to speak. And all of this is centered around content creation and taking an idea from zero that never existed into something that finally exists, right? And so and so I get to satisfy all of those needs I have to speak to people, to educate people, to write, to produce something from zero. So what I don't want to happen for you is for you to be confused. Right? It's okay to let some things go by the roadside and not develop them. It's okay for you to take 2 or 3 things and develop those things, and it's okay to let some of your passions remain passions, right? An example of this for me personally is I've wanted to create some kind of app or community for PhDs where they can find somebody that is working in a specific field and chat with them, sort of matchmaking job seekers with people already in the field, matchmaking them for informational interviews, right? I know that such communities exist, but I keep on getting a lot of messages in my inbox that indicate that this could be really helpful. And yes, this is something that I wish I could create. I'm already passionate about it. I already create content around it. But the reality is that I don't have that much time. Right? I only have so much bandwidth to take care of all the things I already have to take care of and then build this thing on top. So right now in my life, I'm not necessarily building new things because I have way more than enough, right? Between my career and all the things that I am making money from to now bring in something else. So at some point, it's okay to tell yourself that it's enough. I've developed these 2 or 3 things and I am satisfying all my passions And I'm just going to focus on that and not chase shiny objects, because listen, chasing those shiny objects is never ending.